Before the break, we were chatting about the last mile and some of the constraints we could see going forward. Again, it's got to do with pricing. We're also talking about whether WACS is a truly open cable. On that note, I'd like to actually pick up on the last mile. MTN is looking at the overall last mile as a very big focal point, and of course when it comes to CapEx spend, and I think a lot of telcos are doing the same. It is a very costly exercise. How far are you with regards to this? And tell us a little bit about fibre rollout.
Okay, right now MTN's got a very, very aggressive rollout strategy in terms of getting metro fibres out to its base stations. That's quite critical. Right now we are embarking on the whole LTE journey going forward. That LTE journey going forward requires significant capacities to the base station, and therefore it's critical for us to do that. So that is a very, very big focus for us to get that done as soon as possible.
Do you think that, I mean, we're talking about cables coming to Africa, but then again, of course, SEACOM, in fact, being one of the first, if I'm not mistaken. Again, it's got to do with the last mile. What is your view in terms of how far we've come? And again, we keep talking about the local loop being unbundled. Remains to be seen how it's going to be done. But again, it is a sequence of events that we need to focus on.
Yeah. Look, I think there's been a lot of movement in mindsets on the last mile, and particularly what interests me, and I sort of feel everyone's caught on to, is the role that this fixed mobile technology and the networks can play in the last mile. Everyone was fibre to the X. Everything was about you need fibre to every home. We discussed it in one of the shows here previously. I think the reality now is the technology, by distributing last mile through these mobile networks, is really showing phenomenal speeds and throughput, and the capabilities are there. You know, we spoke earlier about LTE and 3GS and all the rest of it. So I think there needs to be a lot of focus. I think local loop unbundling is something that's going to happen too late. You know, copper is not going to provide us the level of throughput that we require in a couple of years.
Do you think we can leapfrog the last mile, essentially? Is that what you're alluding to?
Yeah, I think, you know, that's going to happen naturally. You know, we haven't had the local loop unbundled, and as such, we've had to find routes around that. And the mobile networks have come to the table. We've seen the investment with Cell C and Vodacom and MTN. Everyone's pumping huge amounts of money into these fantastic networks that are distributing the bandwidth. So, no, I'm very optimistic, and I'm glad that there's this realization now that it's not all doom and gloom without fibre. Fibre is important between the base stations and between the metro areas, but it's not the be-all and end-all to the home to make things work.
Dobek, from your viewpoint, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that we do have a case for combination of various access technologies. We're not going to leapfrog the last mile. Last mile is always there. It's a question of what technologies do we use to best service the customer to reach that enterprise or consumer. And wireless, you know, I think maybe naturally, not only in Africa, but also in developed markets, it has overtaken fixed wireline, copper and cable and fibre cable links to premises, and it's used by far more broadband users or subscribers in a country, in developed markets and developing markets, because of the poor state of fixed line infrastructure in many cases. But fibre is important to large corporations, to the business environment. There'll always be customers for fibre, even in South Africa, maybe not to the extent we see in Europe or in East Asia, where the density tends to be far greater of consumers, of users. But we're already seeing the rollout of that fibre to gated communities, to complexes, and then just a matter of distributing it to individual households. So fibre has almost infinite capacity depending what sort of equipment you deploy on it. Wireless is still constrained. Spectrum is a constraint. So whilst it's going and able to service people to a great extent, we get to a point where you also need other technologies to be implemented.
Okay, so a mixture of all the technologies, it seems, and we are very behind when it comes to the rolling out of fibre, and it's going to be a very costly exercise for us here in South Africa, and I'm sure for the rest of the continent as well. So with regards to the actual investment that needs to be put through by the big names in Africa, do you think that they'll be able to pass this on to the consumer, Dobek?
In Africa, in general? Well, instead, I think we've already seen actually a number of markets that are becoming relatively advanced, Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana, but that advancement has taken place by and large in large metropolitan areas, 1, 2, 3 maybe hubs in a country. The rest is still the secondary towns, cities, and the underserved sort of peripheral rural areas will rely on wireless for probably forever, or certainly for a very long time. because there probably won't be any need to deliver other networks or other access networks to those communities. But I think it's ultimately is going to be based on a business case. If companies do see a business case, they certainly try to reach them as best they can. I think there'll also be probably more public partnerships where government will cooperate and try to develop business models with private companies to try and reach communities that are underserved.
Okay, let's talk then about the impact of cables in Africa and the impact on the market in the telecom space as a whole.
Look, I think more specifically, I guess that question's about maybe South Africa now with the coming in of WACS and SEACOM and SAT3 and EASSy and all of us sort of hitting the country over a sort of a similar period of time, or the latter ones anyway. I think it has a big impact on the country. It's still trickling down to the end consumers, but we're seeing big decreases in price, and we're seeing improvements in speeds and investment in terrestrial networks that weren't in place. And those are the fundamentals, the 80% or 60% that maybe wasn't focused on before. But I think what WACS does do and what it does bring to the country is it's going to apply more pressures to price. It's going to improve the quality of service in the country because it allows the likes of ourselves and EASSy restoration up the West Coast, and it allows the West Coast cables restoration if you go on WACS with us as well. So I think it improves the overall quality and the SLA of the network. It drops down the prices, and it's again going to put further pressure on the terrestrial networks that are key that we're speaking about.
Well, we were giving Edwin a very hard time with the WACS cables going to be truly open or not. We're looking at SEACOM. What is your perspective on this, and are you treating each customer fairly when it comes to price?
Yeah, look, we're very transparent with our pricing. I manage pricing in SEACOM as part of my role, and we have a single tool that we share amongst the business that generates standardized pricing. So we ensure that every customer is getting the same pricing. Now, obviously, if a customer is going to buy a huge amount of bandwidth, they're going to benefit from that. That's the standard principles anywhere with purchasing. But the benefit of having a single point such as ourselves determining pricing is, A, we are neutral in terms of telecom interests, and B, our modus operandi, our focus is to drop prices. Our view on elasticity is that when prices go down, volumes go up. We make money dropping the price. And I know that sounds very noble, but the economics make sense, and you can see it when we landed. Prices down, volumes up.
Let me ask you this. When you're talking about competition, prices are going to come down, and perhaps having more cables in South Africa gives you opportunity to, for maintenance and so forth. Are you saying that there's going to be synergies between all of the cables that have landed in South Africa going forward?
Not collusion.
Okay.
That's not going to happen. No, synergies is a word that ex-consultants use a lot, and it can mean a lot of things. So I just want to be clear. But, I think everyone will benefit from each other, but at the same time, there's going to be healthy competition. None of the cables are speaking to each other, and I speak that from a SEACOM perspective. Yeah. We're all fighting there to get our share of the market and enable low-cost international bandwidth, and the fastest survive. So that's how we're moving.
Okay, so long-term evolution, you mentioned a bit earlier, and of course it is one of the most recent projects that have been launched by MTN. It is in pilot phase, but to my understanding, I think Vodacom has also launched a very similar project, I think last year sometime. Tell us a little bit more about the technology behind ensuring that the end consumer does experience speed, uninterrupted internet access, because that is what the consumer wants at the end of the day. We've grown leaps and bounds, it seems.
If we look at technologies like LTE, LTE is one of the technologies addressing one of the very things we've been discussing today, which is the lack of that final local loop at reasonable speeds. To date, the best way of getting to the home has either been through a 3G type infrastructure, or alternately through an ADSL infrastructure. Now, taking a country like South Africa, where we have over 5 million active internet users, there's only in the order of 700,000 or 800,000 ADSL lines in the country. So it gives you some sort of context to the equation. So products like the MTN product coming along with the LTE technology behind it give you speeds of up to 70 megabits per second to the subscriber. Now, that is far in excess of what you're even seeing in the ADSL environments. Yes, it is a shared technology at the end of the day, so a number of subscribers are going to be sharing in a pool of capacity. but it is far beyond what we're seeing at the moment. So it's a big step getting to this.
Dobek, are you convinced?
No, definitely. I think it's wireless technology, radio technology has been improving tremendously. It's a dynamic environment, and every couple of years we see significant advancements in technology.
When do you project that LTE will hit the market on a commercial level in South Africa?
In South Africa, well, we see tests now. It probably depends on the operators as they see the business case. I would suspect so 2013 we'll see quite a bit of deployment starting to take place. But I think LTE, and I stand to be corrected, but as far as I understand it, will be predominantly at first a technology that will address more business environment needs, small, medium-sized businesses, because it is going to be predominant a data network, so it will compete with other technologies like WiMAX, like ADSL. So it will be an ADSL substitute, a data line rather than a voice line. So it will be orientated towards the higher data users.
I know Aidan had quite a lot of questions about LTE. Just hearing a little bit of the rhetoric now, are you convinced at this point in time that we can get it right and that it can offer consumers exactly what the needs are in every aspect in South Africa, covering all geographies in the country?
Look, you've put me in a position where I can't say yes. Look, I think LTE, 4G, there are a lot of sort of acronyms and a lot of jargon going around, and we've seen the debacle in South Africa between Cell C and Vodacom and fighting over terminology. I think the reality is the current networks in the country are all at a similar state of advancement. Maybe some of them are piloting newer technologies than others, but fundamentally they're right up there. I know that Cell C's network can upgrade potentially up to 100 megabits per second, in the coming year or so. So, the technology's there. Whether we call it LTE or 4G, I think I wouldn't want to confuse the general concept, and that there's a lot of capability that's going to get there, and I think it'll be very good.
Aidan, the biggest concern for you right now, the biggest challenge for Africa when it comes to data?
Look, again, it's getting inland. It's getting into the landlocked countries. It's trying to make those decisions whether you build your own fiber connecting from the submarine cables into a country or whether you buy, and how you get there quickly, and the quality, the quality to get there. So that's it, yeah.
Edwin.
Look, I think for us it's always ensuring that we have good resilience and therefore investments in both coastlines. And then, of course, from a national perspective, putting a lot into the national infrastructure to join those cables up.
Dobek, your concern going forward?
Well, cables, as Aidan alluded to, but he mentioned quality at the end of it, and there's also quality in the last mile, what the consumer actually experiences. And what happens is a lot of operators just want to sign up as many people as possible, but don't necessarily provide for the capacity and the management thereof that's sufficient.